The elevator pitch kind of gives us the insight into you. So remember I said I'm not a big fan of the objective statement. The elevator pitch I'm actually quite a big fan of. So I really want to know where, who you are. What motivates you? What's your background? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? That lovely question that we typically get. So be prepared about what you want to say. One of the best career advice I ever got was from one of our senior VPs who was a big proponent on career development, and he would always say, you always want to think about not that next position you get, but the position after that. That's really what you want to think about. And so if you can craft an elevator pitch where you can put something about 5 years, 10 years from now, great. Because I think that shows commitment to the employer that you want to be there long term. One of the other things that I highly advise you to do when you're preparing for that interview is make sure you know about the company that you're interviewing with. The other thing that I would recommend is when you're actually in the interview, take notes. And especially if you have a panel interview and you're meeting with John and Mary and Susie and Scott and Steve and who knows who you might be meeting with, right? Because in the follow-up section I'll talk about, it's super important that you kind of call out things that you heard in that discussion with John or with Susie or with Scott. Things that maybe only you and John talked about. So something that signals to John, oh, he was actually paying attention when I said this. If you're doing a phone interview, make sure, like, if you're on your cell phone, that your phone is charged. Again, I know it sounds silly, but I've had interviews where in the middle of the interview, it died on the candidate. And they had to call back in frantically on a landline. It happens, but again, it's probably not the best first impression you want to make, right? So for me, I kind of use the phone interviews as maybe a test. Do I want to bring this person in? Because usually when I bring people in, I have my team to interview people. So I don't want to waste their time if it's maybe not a candidate that I don't think is worthy about the other candidates that I'm bringing in. So I'll do a phone interview just to kind of test it out. Your voice is really important because we have no idea what you look like. Not that it really should matter, but I've gotten a lot of interviews over the phone where I'll dial in or I'll call somebody. On the other end, I get the hello. Oh, I'm sorry, did I wake you? And then if you're doing a face-to-face interview, then perhaps you might be using Skype or maybe some other video conferencing platform. Make sure you download or you have the latest updates or you have the latest plugins or whatever it might be prior to that interview. The worst thing you can do is, you're about to get ready and 5 minutes before you log in, oh, you have to load the latest. What? That's kind of a bummer, right? And the other thing you could do is you could practice with friends or your peers so that, maybe you're not looking in the camera correctly, so just making sure that you look better or look great on the other side. The technology piece is the last thing you want to worry about in an interview, right? You really want to make sure your content, that's really the most important thing. Something you could think about is practicing recording yourself and hearing, what you sound like. The other thing, and this is going to sound a little goofy, put a mirror and practice answering questions in front of that mirror. Just kind of make sure you've got a little bit of, visual feedback that way. And, smile. Smile when you're talking. People know when you're smiling when you're talking. It shouldn't be painful. Interviews hopefully aren't painful. So again, your voice is going to represent you, and you want that to be the best representation as possible. Have you Googled yourself lately? Do you know what's out on Google about you? Maybe it was that party 2 weeks ago. Okay, so just be careful about what's available on the internet. Just be cognizant of that. So just leave it at that. And then the other thing is, again, be very confident about the details of your resume. But you're going to be faced with getting familiar with a new company culture. different culture than PSU, different culture than maybe your past experiences. That takes time to ramp. So we as interviewers are trying to figure out, how are you going to deal with that? So typically, I like to focus on a couple of different areas: communication, problem solving, influence, and my favorite, ambiguity. Come prepared with an answer, because that's not a good thing if you don't come prepared.